Yay. Good morning, Yvonne.
Good morning, Sovereign.
So nice to join you again. Another
Yes,
Friday. This is really becoming our little hour here on Friday mornings.
I know. I look forward to it.
So good. Yes. Ah,
Yeah.
well, we had a brief little catch up just before. Today we want to talk about New Earth communities and New Earth sanctuaries, and yeah, that there seems to be quite a bit of urgency in the field as the pressure cooker kind of builds in different places. And you just mentioned that depending on how you want to see things, it's a bit like heaven and hell living very close together. And yeah, I noticed that I'm seeing similar traits of that here. And yet, heaven and hell, of course, are a place in our own minds. That's where we, the master navigators, are again given an opportunity to either be a master or a victim, so to speak. You wrote a beautiful description for today around the urgent need for humanity to relearn our heart and soul relating with self and with each other, to regain the old family values within their family of origin and their family of community. I'd like us to start just there because I could just read over more. But that's a pretty dense statement in the sense that, and I was writing about that yesterday for a project that I'm working on, is this intergenerational and multi-generational, the life ways of peace, of love, of harmony. A lot of people are I don't want to speak on behalf of others, but I myself have been in a place where I just wanted community, as if that was going to be the be and end all of. Now that's where life begins. Anything that I've learned over the past decade is that really whenever I feel that something is really now I got it, no, that's when life begins. And that happens from birth on into adolescence, into then becoming a father, and then, and it's always, and then it actually begins. And so the notion of community and the function as I perceive it as an archetypal narrative is a draw card, is a vehicle, but for what? And so I explored that in the Pacific Ocean a couple of years ago in depth and really sitting with those questions like, all right, so now I have community. And now what? And so, how do we do it? How do we do it as humans together? And particularly around this, the family of community or the family of origin, and how do we relate? How do we work it out?
Big questions. We've only got an hour, remember. When you just said, um, what is it all about? One of my favorite songs, What's It All About, Elfie? Um, it's for expansion. That's all that we come down here for in the first place.
Mhm.
Because the transition we're going into is, we've both talked about this, we're going through a massive identity crisis. And it is the journey from identifying with the solid, with the third dimensional reality that we have created and live in, and this persona, and moving into ourselves as pure energy beings first. That is what is happening at the moment in a big. That's putting the big picture in a really small picture. So it's all about expansion of energy. As energy beings, we're constantly challenging ourselves to become more conscious, to be more aware, to experience more, to to expand. It's until we have better words, that's all that I can really use. So that's what I see what it's for. As far as these communities and the sanctuaries are concerned, you and I were just saying, until people have an alternative to look at, to go towards, they're trapped in this now moment, which is becoming more and more inhuman. We're losing our freedom, we're losing our humanity. That's the thing that's really getting to me, when people are starting to turn on each other within their families and within their friendships and saying, well, because you don't believe what I believe, you are now, out there. And it's breaking families, it's breaking communities. And so my passion and what draws me is to create communities that show an alternative. And that alternative is to come back to our old tribal ways of being kind and considerate and loving and caring for each other. I watch people out there, and they're becoming so not themselves. And you see them so unhappy, because when you start to become something that you're not, and let's face it, none of us are what's playing out there, you become more and more unhappy. We're never happier than when we are supporting someone, when we are being kind to someone, or someone is kind to us. We're never happier than when somebody hugs us and tells us that they love us. Well, how many people are living in isolation that hasn't happened to for 2 years? So unless we offer, but nobody knows how to get out of it. There isn't something that they see to go towards. And for me, that is what the New Earth communities and sanctuaries are about. And you said earlier, before we recorded, that people are going to the land. They're just going, I'm out of here, I'm just going onto the land. Well, that's all well and good. What about all the people that can't? So unless we do this as a whole, unless we do this to offer something better, we have a long road ahead. And that's what I want to talk about. What is a New Earth community and a New Earth sanctuary, and what's the purpose for them? And how are they going to be our next step, the what's next? And the more of us that make that visible,
Yeah.
the more likely we're going to be able to offer something as an alternative.
Yeah.
And until we do that, we're stuck.
Yeah, it's interesting that during this time of compression, that also because of the oppression, a lot of choices are finally, a lot of people are feeling that need to make that decisive step to say, all right, this is it. We're gonna do what we always said that we would. Because see, the truth is that humanity has been lulled in this westernized world, lulled into really submission, and it doesn't even know that. And because it's all been honky dory. We've had all the things that we wanted. We could always just try to change the tiles in our bathroom if we wanted, because there's just a Bunnings next door. And not to say that there's anything wrong with that, but that societal framework and all of its conditioning, which is really in its foundational structures quite rotten, but it's also run in a very simple sense of looking at it by people that are just really opportunistic. So you have the cement industry and the building industry. If we're talking about building communities, we'll end up putting structures in place. But what has been mainly promoted is this suburban, you know, kind of lifestyle that has been part of this high end consumeristic societal framework, with all the, well, call them detriments that come with that, the big landfill operations. And so we're really actually looking at westernized culture, consumer culture. And in that, of course, there is no alternative, because that whole trajectory is only based on selling you more stuff, and the premise upon which it is founded is that it's only through more consumption that that track will actually keep developing and keep growing, and then it becomes attached to staying in business, and so it will try and sell more of the things that we don't need, and before we know it, we're unwillingly but also unbeknownst to ourselves kind of lulled into a consumeristic framework that has nothing to do with bringing fulfillment on that inner plane, so to speak. And yet at the same time, many people have been feeling quite happy, and or at least we thought we were. And so there's a lot to consider in terms of moving onto land. I know for myself that doing it out of the reason of an oppressor really doesn't work, because that requires a third party to always be somewhere looming around. If we bring that into our dreaming for New Earth communities and New Earth sanctuaries, well, if we're basing the foundation of our dreams that we better do it now because otherwise the government, blah, 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 then I see that we have still a lot of garbage, really, that we're bringing into that space. And that's going to influence the foundations, and it's going to influence the orientations. And so I've studied radical human ecology now for, I don't know, 4 years as a study book, to really look at human ecology radically. And I thought that I was pretty radical the years prior to that by really seeing the Western societal framework for the conditioning that it exercises out through education and all these different things that we either take for granted or just see as normal. And from my study of radical human ecology is that there is so much more to bringing into being these new earth sanctuaries and these new earth communities than just defining land to be allocated for such. Because human ecology, when comprehended, is directly speaking to the interrelatedness and to interdependence of us humans with each other and with life all around us. And so, as to your point, where we benefit really looking at what alternative do we actually create, or an avenue in our own capacity. We're not here to save the world. We're not here to, create major new earth sanctuary hospitals for people to come and have refuge. That's not the purpose of sanctuaries, but it is, do we carry in our mind song, in our dreaming, the inclusion of those that are just as stuck as some of us are now? Or do we exclude them? Because that sanctuary, I don't know what you're going to be basing that on. That's just divisionary consciousness. That is nothing about creating new earth frequencies or obtaining that within our own shared communal sphere.
The other day I wrote that, you and I, we're just in kindergarten. It's a learning curve. I think what's missing and where we have to start, like we start when we're born, we have to learn to be different. It's all based on us relating. We have these wonderful things that we now do on heartfelt relating. It is how we relate to each other. You only just have to go out, and you talked about Bunnings. Well, you go into Bunnings and see how many people greet you with joy and look at you and go, hello, and are you having that? No, I need a checkout chick because that's what she's robotically been trained to do. Yes, she might mean it, but she says it to about 1,000 people a day. But we have to learn from the bottom up how to relate to each other from the heart, how to stop looking at each other from the right, wrong, good, bad, black, white, pink, purple, that we are, conditioned to do. We have to look at another human from an energetic wave that is who we are, so that we feel them rather than we analyze them according to the rubbish that's in our head, imprinted in there by somebody else. So when you learn to feel before you interpret, then we're starting to really come home to the old tribal ways. In the last couple of weeks, we've talked about coming back to Mother Nature, coming back to our indigenous selves. And when I look at communities, as the first thing we have to learn is how to communicate, how to commune with each other, how to open our hearts, how to take off the mask of pretense. I'm always saying to people, walk naked. Now, that doesn't mean take your clothes off, that's optional. It is something that is that you have nothing to hide, that we are transparent. We talk about transparency a lot at the moment with systems, being transparent. Well, we need to become transparent. We need to be able to communicate with each other from the heart, from a place of wanting to embrace, to offer ourselves in service with love and support and guidance. In that kind of communication and communing, we are never lonely, we are never in lack, and we're never lost. And when I look out there, I see millions and billions of people who are lonely, who are lost, who have no self-understanding or self-identity. And so we have to start all over again. We have to start from scratch. And I see these New Earth communities as training grounds for us to start to learn a new way of relating with each other, where we throw out the window the fear of somebody taking something from you, because that's what's been imprinted on our mind. You take before they take from you. And you talked about, the institutions of the Bunnings, etc., and all the corporations, and it's all about profit and loss, money-wise. But has anybody thought about the profit and loss within our heart and soul? This is why I'm so passionate about creating this vibrational frequency where everyone is the same. Yes, we are at different levels of inner standing, and we're certainly, like all humans, we're either a 2-year-old or a 10-year-old, and sometimes a 2-year-old knows more than a 10-year-old. But it's a progression. And so these communities and sanctuaries are places where you can come to learn. I just see them as instead of what you call a education, it's a life education. I don't know, we have to make a new word for that. Where people come to learn to come back to the values of humanity, human kindness. It is our essence, and yet how many of us feel free or safe to do that openly without being taken advantage of or without somebody judging you? We are the weirdest species. I just think, so that's really where I want to go. This is what my energy is, to create these communities where we can start to live life in celebration of each other, no matter what level you're at, and always with a hand out going, take my hand, you're not alone.
Yeah, there's so much to this, and I feel for myself as I'm listening to you, it's just so bizarre that for the past 6 7 years, this has been my, well, actually, of course, my entire life, but this has been my life's work to figure all of this stuff out way ahead of time and actually have gone into the depths of what it really looks and feels like out in remote places where the trigger points that you didn't even know existed all come up around money, around security, around safety, around boundaries and borders, and how do we envision, because it's so easy to be naive about the beauty and how it's all going to be so great and how it's all going to be so beautiful. And yes, it makes sense to envision that we can have energetic force fields around our beautiful sanctuaries because of our intentions. I also know that if we're still, if things, quote unquote, still perform a function with purpose for our growth, they will come into the ecosystem. So if we haven't learned and if we haven't grown, but really if we haven't returned to some degree of wholeness or are on the willful path and committed journey to return to that wholeness, which is what I call re-enabling our human nature, then circumstances and events are being drawn in for us to get those opportunities. And so I'm reflecting while I'm listening, and I'm going like, yeah, wow, this is quite astonishing to reflect on my own small years in really trying to unpack this and really then discovering that it's not as easy as just coming together. And of course it is that easy at some level, but it's how do we relate, how do we navigate, what without becoming a cult, what what culture are we culturing, what are we fostering. And I dare say that the projects prior to Brave New Life Community for me were great preparatory human experimentation projects and given me a lot of experience to kind of initiate something that for me is all about how does it self-replicate, because you can start a community with 30 people and I can start a community with 30 people, and does that then also create a self-replication in our human ecology? Because what we are currently self-replicating and have been self-replicating is the transgenerational hand down of unresolved emotional imprinting, aka trauma. And what we ended up doing is operating our societal framework on a trauma-based mind control society. And it doesn't sound pretty, but if you want to look at what's really going on and how hollow and empty and disconnected people feel as part of our whole human family, that is all part and parcel of how we got to where we got and the things that we did in the process of arriving where we are. And so, how do we restore that? How do we foster community and the ways of relating, the life ways of peace and the life ways of understandings that are based on nature's principles, natural principles, indigenous understandings? And for me, it's really realizing that it's far more complex than I initially thought, because I just thought the concept of community was the goal. But that's where it kind of just began. And in order for concepts to be able to self replicate themselves in human ecology, is not by having an ideology of sorts about life or reality. It needs to actually be a life way, it needs to be lived, because you can't teach this stuff. This is no longer time to sit children down in school benches to say, well, this is how we relate, or however nice you want to do it. The younglings will absorb by witnessing what is forelived in front of them. That is how they are imprinted with harmonic, syntropic, love filled, respect filled, honor, all the beautiful virtues and values that we kind of hammer on about in school. They are actually requiring to be exemplified not by means of teachings, but by means of being lived as a harmonic relating way in communities. And well, when we go and look at accomplishing that, obviously we really benefit looking at why are we not doing it like that? Or what's sitting in the way of doing it like that? And so for me, part of New Earth sanctuaries and New Earth communities, if the dreaming and the envisioning is not inclusive of the intergenerational, but also the future generational imprinting, and what are we imparting onto them? How are we setting them up in that succession planning of human ecology if the children aren't part of the dreaming? And really, I mean, not just like, yeah, we're going to make it great for our kids. They are as sovereign as you and I are. And if anything, in our human ecology, the elderly and the younglings are actually more precious than kind of the ones sandwiched in the middle. Not that a life matters more. It's just that at that early stage in life, there is so much. If we get it right, and if it becomes forelived in a beautiful syntropic way, then we set these children up with abilities to know themselves, their own truth, to know nature, to know all of the things, but from within. And if we get it wrong, well, then we have to spend, 30 years later down the track, um, lots of time on repairing, restoring, re-enabling. And there's learning in that, but I don't see that that's really the function or the purpose or the time frame that we have available, um, to quote unquote get it right. It's a very deep topic, and I'm inspired to be able to even explore all of this.
Well, because you and I are somehow um, beings that are receiving um, a message, whatever you want to say. Something within us is pushing us forward to explore this because it is necessary to explore right now. We are living in a continuously expanding, changing universe. Nothing stays the same. It just baffles me how people want to have the same normal. Why? That is so boring. Honestly, but make sure that the change is expansive. And I keep taking it to a bigger picture because from a distance, everything looks far more doable than when you're in the middle of it. But for me, I know that we are entering a time for humanity to be free from all this damage that we've suffered and all of our ancestors have suffered through the dark side of, I always say, the dark side of this orbital movement around our central sun. And what I see being played out at the moment is it's a bit like a boil, right? All the infection, all the damage has become this boil that's come to this time of rupture. And I remember when I was just after the war, and I was what, 5, I think, and I was introduced to going to school. I mean, I'd never been out of the house. My backyard was, where I lived for the first 5 years of my life. And because it was too dangerous to go out the front door. But then I had to go to school, which was a totally foreign thing. But I developed on my knee, and this is not a very nice subject, but I developed about a dozen boils, which was all the trauma that I had suffered through those 5 first years of my life. Now I see that was all coming to a head, and I remember, and why I mentioned it is I remember that I stood up in my, one of those old desks where you had the little flap and little seat, and I stood up and I hit my knee on the side of the desk, and it exploded. And to this day, I can feel it, and I can feel the pain, and I can see it just all came out. And I feel that is what's happening globally at the moment. I think all the human damage, all the suffering and the pain, it's like it's coming to the surface. And it's coming to the surface for the purpose of healing. And that healing is what needs to be offered in our communities and our sanctuaries. Because people are they we've lived through eons, and everyone that incarnates carries with them within their cell structure their ancestral pains. And so whatever you do in life today either heals those in front of you, it stops what they say, who's going to end the cycle of damage. But once you do, it also heals all those who came before you. And that is how it works. So we as a humanity are looking at a very, very damaged humanity that needs healing, we need to break the cycle. That's what we're looking at. It's time to break the cycle. I've lived through now 3 wars, and I know my choices. I know my choices. My choices are to love mankind, to love me, to treasure life in me, to treasure the life in you, and to find and to create a nest. One of the things that I'm very well known for is that you go to wellness because that is a soft place to fall. So I see these communities as soft places to fall, where there will be no judgment, there will just be nurturing and caring and way showing of how it can be different. And that is my passion. That is certainly what all my vision is about. It is what you and I communicate about. Because what I have done over all these years, I've come home to my true human essence as a co-creative partnership to my true energetic soul essence. And the two have merged. And what happens when you do that, you become one with everything, with nature, with the air. I'm trying to get a word, with the quantum field. And all the little things like that we pay so much attention to, like where to eat and what kind of a chair to buy, and I can't even think about those things anymore because they have become so unimportant. Because the only thing that feels important to me is to create a place that used to be a vision, but it now needs to be brought into form, that is going to show people that it can be different, that we do not have to continue this cycle of human damage, that there is a way out. But that way is only through the heart. It can't be through the head. It can't be through judgment. And it can't be by using the old methodologies or the old imprinting or the old anything, because all that we knew is on its use by date. And people really have to get used to having no landmarks. And it's terrifying. So unless we can create safe houses where people can come and feel they have both the time, the space, and the support to heal from the damage,
Yeah.
then where will they go?
Yeah. Yeah. I totally see my own. I've downloaded so much years ago, and I was just like, wow, okay, that's a bit harsh. Sanctuaries for a post-archonic grip world, and this kind of sense felt knowing that we require these spaces where people can really come to remember really how to how to navigate, how to orientate themselves properly, and naturally as part of a natural human ecological web. And a lot of the times when I've looked at how to bring that into form, I was like, well, am I just a lone nut here? Am I only, am I perceiving this right? And when I spent my year in the remote bush in Vanuatu, I had the opportunity to really explore that. But one of the connotations or ideologies or sort of outlines, belief systems that was there present was that this was not to be a hospital for people. And in one form, I agreed because it's just a concept. And in the other form, I was like, well, if you only want people here that are ready, complete, whole, and healed, well, then you're just entertaining another distorted form of human damage because you're entertaining a fantasy that's never going to be real. And what I realized in the process is that the comprehensions around human damage and around the ways and the means to heal and to re-enable the natural frequencies to come through by the release and the reintegration of disassociated aspects of self and the emotional reactions that occur as triggers with the purposeful function to give us an opportunity to heal that. If we're going to not create space for that, and we don't have life ways of navigating that, we're not orientated in ways that are nurturing and compassionate environments, which is like, well, okay, well, I see there's something going on with you, you'll work it out. um, our human ecology is such that we're social creatures, and in that sense we're interdependent and um, and interconnected with each other on a social emotional level, where we naturally are looking for others to perform functions with purpose, not out of a dependency, but if I have stuff coming up for me and I don't have anybody to share that with, I can speak it out to a wall, or I can write it out in my book. But if there's no witness, because whatever story I'm trying to transform did have probably a perpetrator or an influencer or an oppressor, whatever we want to call that, because there was a human involved, because we're part of human ecology here on this earth, excluding any aspect of our human ecology for the sake of it just being a little bit more easy, because it's already so hard to put a community together. So let's just not think about that for a while. um, the task at hand is a lot more intriguing. And for me, the syntropic human ecology and the study thereof and the questioning deeply of how that functions, and really not so much from an intellectual place, but how to cultivate the compassionate capacity to have understanding and understanding and comprehension of the depth and the scope of human damage in and of itself is profoundly relevant. And I know that there are many New Earth communities around the world. There's new ones being started up. And I've been very up close in the dynamics of New Earth communities being voiced and spoken about. And the one key component that I see is the missing link is syntropy, and syntropy in human ecology. Because we can build the most beautiful and inspiring and communities and sanctuaries that have a sense of we're leading the way, because we're developing really beautiful architectural beautiful spaces. but where all of our human ecology is actually hinged around is how we relate, how we actually are able to feel and share our feelings. It's not about the amazing structures we can build or the amazing free energy technologies that we can all deploy, because for me at this point, that is all just rah rah rah. That is all just making things look really great and sound really good. Where the rubber hits the road is not all the things we can do, but the life ways of peace that we are living in an embodied fashion that are able to be lived in front of the next generation. And we abstain from handing down that trauma to the next generation because we have cultivated love and a return to wholeness within. And we prioritize that because building stuff, that's not the issue. We got hands, we got heads, we got skills, we got technologies, we got computers to research and make cat drawings. All of that is pretty straightforward. And of course, it's beautiful and of course, it's inspiring. But where I see that new earth sanctuaries and sanctuaries for the new earth are to really have an imprinting around and a yearning for is how do we make our human ecology become one that is worthy of it even calling it new earth, because we can label and stick labels on concepts very easily, but what is that real consciousness, that soul frequency expressed and embodied and lived not as an intellectual property piece but as a way of grace and a way of ease and a way that is compassionately spacious for people to find their way home to self, where we can handhold each other without having to walk each other there. Wow.
Love, 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 love it. Because my next thing was, I don't think I'm not looking for land. Not yet. If that is where we're meant to go, then I will go there. But I can tell you that I've been working for 35 years creating a community, and all the people that are in the community that I surround myself with have been working on their human damage, and they are the people, the way showers as I see them. And you have done the same. We are starting to help the people to become the people that we need to become to live in New Earth communities. So I don't have land, but I tell you what, we have such beautiful people around us that everyone who comes when we have a gathering, either on Zoom or somewhere else, they go, wow, who are these people? Well, these are the people that have learned how to let go of all the old and to become true to their passion, true to their calling, their inner calling, true to their connection to source and to nature, who have let go of the attachment to things and have created a greater attachment to living their truth in love, in harmony, in sharing and caring with others. So it's not about a place, it's about becoming it. You have done that with the Brave New Life community that you're now creating. People are learning to relate differently to each other, to find their inner truth, because we're not meant to be warring. We're not meant to be killing each other. We're not meant to be fighting with each other. If that was how we're supposed to be, it would make us happy. And I don't think it does. Well, for very few maybe. But but for me, our community, why you and I have been drawn together is because we have the same energy that is driving us to show that we can relate differently, that we can come together in community, in sharing and caring. And I know within the Brave New Life community, because I see that being part of that, and within the community here, the Connect to Soul New Earth community, that there's nobody ever left on their own. They can reach out and they can talk to someone, like you said, unless there is witness. So this creating of communities is not about a place, it's about a frequency. New Earth isn't a place, it exists in a different frequency. And that is what we are going through, this moving our consciousness to a whole new level. And that is not new. I was thinking the other day, if my mother turned up today, she would think she was in Mars because of the changes that have occurred in technology. And, it is amazing. So we need to let go of hanging on to things that no longer serve us. And we need to embrace and open ourselves up to find new and innovative. Look, humanity is the most innovative species. We are brilliant, magnificent, but we're so restricted and constricted. And so these communities is about allowing your natural creativity in service of others to live with each other or not with each other, free choice. And yes, if we want a sanctuary, yes, that can be a place, but I don't believe that a community has to be a place. I believe it is who you become within yourself first. To have, if you do not have a relationship with yours that is completely free of judgment, that is completely embracing and accepting and of tolerance and compassion for doing the best you can with what's served up to you. If you're still having this baseball bat out all the time because you're not good enough, then you need to go out and burn that jolly thing, because we are creatures who are learning by experience, and sometimes we do it well and sometimes we don't. But that's okay. It is this whole new way of being, and it needs to be in a community of people where you feel safe to explore yourself, where you feel safe and you feel welcome, where you're not having a finger pointed or a judgment or someone's opinion thrust down your face, where you just are held in a space until you can find your own true nature in relationship to a higher state of consciousness. And when you do that, then you find the new earth. Then we can talk about what we've talked about. Then we find the magic of ourselves. Then we know that we have a thought and suddenly there it turns up. Because the power that is dormant within the human species is tragic. I laugh all the time because I think of something, and because I work so diligently at keeping my vibrational frequency high, it turns up almost immediately. And I just think that is such a wonder of what everybody could have, and everybody does have. Unfortunately, unconsciously, fear will come and bite you in the butt just as quickly as the goodies will come and nurture you. And so that's a whole learning curve of finding what we're made of, what's possible for us. That old instruction manual that we didn't have. When we learn to become self-governing, self-sovereign, and self-living, then we have a new earth that's worthy of creating communities.
Wow, you're speaking my language, Yvonne. This is it's so amazing. This is exactly what what my project yesterday that I mentioned at the beginning was all about and is all about. Is to getting really real around the embodiment, the restoration, and the regeneration, and the pathways to that for communities to also then be able to become expressed through means of these beautiful sanctuaries. And of course, we're not here to put any connotations or limitations out on anybody's fantasies and their attractions. This is all in service of a deeper inquiry on the path and on the in the process. And I recognize that that is serving a function for me. Just to hear your words resounded back to me is like, wow, that's pretty much what I was writing about just 24 hours ago, with a great passion and a spirited drive to really talk to and articulate and bring into expressed form this process of restoration, because we have been taught, brought down through the education, through the conditioning, through the socially engineered and constructed around a societal framework with all its consumerism and you name it. We can talk about it until the cows come home. It really has brought us down from operating in this frequency within our being, because we're so preoccupied with them and other and this and that. And of course, we've been traumatized severely in the process of losing touch with that natural, organic, love filled nature of both our human ecology and life and nature around us. And so there's a great kind of segregation and separation that can be experienced as a disconnection within oneself to the natural world. And I know firsthand of that, because I kind of bridge the digital world all the way into the subsoil of land where I plant seeds. And to navigate all of those ecologies, building websites and digital ecosystems, and also being connected on an earth-based level by designing syntropic agroforestry systems, that's a lot to kind of bridge in a sense. And for the longest time, I was really intimidated and actually quite terrified of actually really doing the thing with nature, to really engage on that level. So there's so much that I recognized I was disconnected from within myself. I got it all conceptually, and but it was a lot easier to just build websites than to plant out a garden. Why? Because that's when it gets really real. That's when a disconnection to the natural world and the uncomfortability around the realization that I kind of know all of this stuff, but I actually don't know it. And there's a different aspect of knowing things from here and knowing things with this and with this. And with that, I've come to recognize that it's in all these stratas, it's in all these layers, and it's in all these aspects of our human engagement with the world around us that I really benefit training myself to become a master navigator. Not because I can be the master, but mastery is something that comes about by means of navigating the ecosystems of choice and also of attraction, to then have it just simply become second nature. I don't know why we call things second nature,
It's
because
first
what
nature.
it's first nature.
Mm-hmm.
And that takes training, and it takes training and it takes a willful commitment in my own experience, because I was so dedicated to orientate, put my ladder up against the wall. I think that if I was just going to climb that ladder there, and I was young enough and my spirit was strong enough to indicate to me that ladder is not going to work. So go to the other side of the world, try a ladder there. And 20 years later, I'm in a place where there is no ladder. There is a ladder within. And just to finish off on my part here for this beautiful hour, one of the great takeaways of my time in the remote jungle and the confrontation with myself, being in the raw, being fully naked. I mean, yes, also physically, but being totally undressed conceptually, as identity based layers and masks were all just no longer, they had no relevancy, and they had no purpose. But undoing them and letting go of them was very confronting, because I had to meet myself in that. One of my great takeaways from that experience was that Eden was this beautiful newer sanctuaries called East of Eden. That Eden is a place inside our being. Just like the new earth is not something out there. It's a frequency. It's an energy. It's a consciousness that we can only return to within, ascend to within, that we can reach by means of actually embracing so much of all of the damage that we also spoke towards.
Beautiful. You know, as you're saying that, it's really simple. I used to, I used to in my teachings always say it's simple but not easy. So the thing that people don't get, we are energy beings. And whatever you desire, we've been taught we have to go out and work for it. But whatever you desire, you have to become the energetic vibration of it for it to come into view. So if you want freedom right now, become free in here. That is the simple truth. If you want to live in a community of love and harmony and peace and abundance for all, become that in here first. And when you become that vibration, then it will be revealed to you, because the moment that you have the thought or the idea, it is already somewhere. It just hasn't come into form for you. This is how it works. So if you want freedom, stop asking someone to give it to you. Become free in here. If you want to be healthy, then become healthy in here. Don't ask someone to give you permission to be healthy. If you want love, then become love in here. If you want peace, become peace in here. And when you put all of that together, welcome to the new earth. Wow.
So beautiful, Yvonne. It's very simple and it's not easy. I look forward to another hour where we explore this and speak to this more, because there's a lot to it.
Oh,
And
yes.
it's a beautiful, beautiful opportunity for us to find the articulate ability to share comprehensions around this, so that for me, and one of the reasons I show up in this, is that not only do I gain more insight and am able to apply it to myself, but it becomes replicable in our human ecology, because we have a greater response ability in terms of the next generations. And so maybe we can talk about that next week in relationship to this intergenerational, and particularly the children. Because if anything is a catalyst for change, for transformation, for radical uprooting dysfunctional behavior, it is and has been for me through the awareness of how our actions, if we are willing to come into awareness, how our actions have an impact on the generations to come. And when we shine light on that, which I done for myself extensively, actions start changing, and behavior starts being modified.
Mm.
But that's it's a subject that I feel it's dear to my heart, and I know that it's dear to the heart of humanity, because the younglings, the children, they are our human future, and in them resides the future of our future's future, this this new earth.
I think we are on a trajectory that's inevitable. I am forever the optimist.
So good.
So, New Earth, I'm living there. Just come and join me.
So great, Yvonne. Thank you. We'll meet again.
Yep.
Yay.
Bye bye.